In this video, we're going to show you how to install the bellows boot on your Toyota Tundra located on your steering rack. Using a 22mm socket, let's go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. Go ahead, grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Now that we have the wheel removed, the first thing we want to do is come over to our jam nut here, and we need to loosen this here. So I'm going to use a pair of pliers, these big lockjaw units here, and put that on there. And we're going to rotate this a little bit. Here we go. You can see that our inner tie rod is spinning with the jam nut. We'll work on that later on, but we just need to loosen that from our outer tie rod. Now let's go ahead and remove our cotter pin and nut. So we have the outer tie rod here, and we want to go ahead and remove this nut, but we need to remove the cotter pin first. So what you want to do is use a tool to go ahead and remove the cotter pin. Ours is pretty crumbly. It's literally just falling apart on us as we're trying to remove it. So you're going to want to use any tool you can to go ahead and bend these tabs over. And these are just the two tail legs of it. Now the main piece you want to try and get to is right in here. This is the loop. You can just barely starting to see that move there. So normally what you can do is if you can gain access to that hoop or the loop of it, I'm going to use my cutters, grab that on the back side, pinch it gently, and then just rock it. Pinch and rock, pinch and rock. And you can see that I was able to work that cotter pin out. Sometimes you can't do that. It just kind of crumbles away inside here. At that point, you're just going to put a socket on here and use your impact gun and rip that right off. Now I want to go ahead and loosen this nut here. It could be a 24mm or a 15/16. Now that we removed it, we're going to take that nut and we're going to throw this back on. Just a few threads. And this nut is going to be used as a capture nut. Now we're going to use a hammer and we're going to strike right here on the knuckle. By striking this, it'll shock the ball joint out and it'll drop down. And the purpose of that nut is to capture it. Now that the ball joint has dropped, loosen that nut. Pull that down and out. Now we need to remove our outer tie rod from the inner tie rod. So we're going to count our revolutions of this coming off. And that way there, when we install it, we're going to count the same amount of revolutions. So that sets us up with a preliminary setting of our alignment. So we got 15 turns on our vehicle. Yours will probably be different. So you want to make sure that you get that. Now I'm going to use a crayon and I'm simply going to write right on the frame 15. That way there, I don't have to remember this. You can use a notepad, whatever you want to do. Next thing I want to do is remove our jam nut here. I'm going to grab the inner tie rod with some pliers here. Now we're going to use a 30mm socket to go ahead and loosen our jam nut. We do have our pliers on here, so this is going to hold that. Set that nut aside. We'll be reusing that. And then we can remove our pliers. And using a pair of pliers, we want to go ahead and remove this clamp here. I'm going to pinch, open that up, and remove that clamp. Set that aside. Next step is there's a clamp on the inside, a band clamp that is at the end of this ribbed boot, and it's a one-time use. So once we remove it, that band is junk, but that's fine. We have a strap that's gonna replace that. So let's go ahead and do that next. Now the tool we're gonna use for this is simply a screwdriver, and what I did was I put a little notch in the middle of it here, and what that does is one of these little ears actually catches on the loop. Now on the inside here, our particular loop is on the top. It could be positioned anywhere around the boot itself. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our screwdriver on that little ear, and we're gonna whack that with a hammer and pop that band right off. There's the band, and we can go ahead and toss that out. With both of the bands removed, we can go ahead and grab that boot and work that off. Now, things you want to pay attention to is if you have a bunch of fluid leaking out of the steering rack itself, then that means that the inner rack seal is worn, and you want to go ahead and service that now before you put all this back together. Now that we have the boot off, if you want to, you can go ahead, take some grease and pack that into the inner tie rod. If you have some extra silicone paste, you can pack some in here. That'll just help with the longevity. While you're there, go ahead and do it. It's not mandatory, but it's always something that to make it a good practice. And once you have that taken care of, you can go ahead and grab your boot and align this up and slide this on. Now I want to work that boot onto the rack itself. And just twist that and work that on. You can take a look up from underneath, feel around and make sure that it's fully seated, and ours is. Now I'm going to show you what we're going to do with our strap here. We're going to use the old boot as a reference. This is where the old metal clamp went, or strap. You simply want to take this tie strap that is with the unit, and we're going to start it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slide this strap over the outside, and we're going to end up putting it on the inside, just like so. And then we're going to tighten the strap, and we're going to cut off the leftover. So let's go ahead and get that on there. Well, it's easier to start that strap and work it down than it is to try and connect the two ends. So go ahead and work that down and into place. Okay, you can actually feel in there where that band is located. I'm going to take a pair of pliers here. You can simply grab that tail, pinch it, and rotate, and that will tighten that band, that strap. And once you get that good and snug, we can simply go in there with our cutters. I'm going to go in with our cutters and cut off the tail end. Now what we want to do is we're going to slide our boot out here to where the original one was placed. Now that we have the inner strap installed, we're going to do the same on the outside. You can just simply muscle that on, pull that, make sure it's good and tight, cut off the tail end. Now we went ahead and cleaned up our threads here. We just used a little bit of spray solvent and a wire brush and cleaned up the threads on that. We're going to put some anti-seize compound on the threads. Grab our jam nut. We're going to try and thread that up as far as we can to where it was before. And then we're going to grab our tie rod end and we're going to thread that on. As we had documented earlier on our particular model, it's going to be 15 complete revolutions. Once again, ours will probably be different from yours, so make sure that you don't copy ours. Go ahead and grab that tie rod end. There's our 15. Grab our knuckle here, and we're going to line this up. Feed our tie rod end back in. Now on the tie rod here, where we had removed that cotter pin from, you want to take note of it. We're going to have to install a new cotter pin, and it needs to fit into this notch in our castle nut. Thread that down. Let's go ahead and torque that on. We want to torque this down to 51 foot-pounds. Now when you take this off, you want to pay attention to where that hole is for the cotter pin. Now you're going to have to source a cotter pin for this here, as cotter pins are obviously a one-time use. And you can see it's not lining up. You never want to loosen this nut in order to line up the hole for the cotter pin. You want to go ahead and tighten this in small increments until that notch in the castle nut lines up. And there we have it. So I'm going to push that cotter pin in. We're going to grab one of those legs, peel that up, bend it over. I'm going to snip off the excess. And then don't forget to cut off the bottom leg. Dispose of that. Now at this point here, because we did play with the tie rod end here, it is highly recommended that you bring this vehicle in and get an alignment performed. Otherwise you may end up with premature worn other components or tire wear. I'm going to tighten down our jam nut. Now you do want to make sure that this is good and tight. And once that's tight, I'm going to go ahead and grab the tie rod, and I want to go ahead and rotate this just so it's in a neutral position. When we tighten it, it twists this ball joint all the way down one way. I'm simply going to rotate this so it is more horizontal with the knuckle itself. Get that wheel lined up on there. Let's get our lug nut started. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Grab your center cap if you have these. When torquing down your lug nuts, you want to go ahead and torque the steel wheel down to 154 foot-pounds. If you have the aluminum wheels, it's 97 foot-pounds. You want to torque this in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.